You know what's fascinating? Some of the most brilliant, emotionally perceptive people you'll ever come across are also the most mentally drained. Not because they're overworked, but because they're overthinking. They replay conversations long after they're over. They construct scenarios that may never exist. They lie awake at 2 a.m., not because something failed, but because their mind refuses to stop asking what if. And here's the paradox at the core of it all. The very mental strength that makes someone insightful, careful, and deeply empathetic is the same force that silently exhausts them. Today, let's unpack the psychology behind overthinking, what's truly happening inside the mind, why it develops, and what it reveals about who these people really are. Let's start with the scientific lens. Psychologists call this pattern maladaptive, rumination, a loop where the mind keeps circling the same thoughts, especially around uncertainty, past events, or social interactions. But here's the truth most people miss. This isn't weakness, this isn't fragility. In many cases, it's the result of a mind that is exceptionally skilled at pattern recognition, constantly scanning, analyzing and searching for meaning. The problem isn't intelligence, the problem is there's no off switch. And interestingly, this is where a subtle Stoic idea quietly fits in. Philosophers like Marcus Aurelius believed that the mind, when left undisciplined, creates more suffering than reality itself. Not because life is chaotic, but because our interpretation of it never stops expanding. Neurologically, this ties into the prefrontal cortex, the command center for planning, analysis, and self-reflection. In overthinkers, this region doesn't easily power down. Even in moments of rest, it stays active. At the same time, the brain's default mode network keeps generating internal dialogue. The result? A mind that's always running, always reviewing, always preparing for conversations that haven't even happened yet. What's even more revealing is that this pattern rarely begins in adulthood. For many, it starts much earlier, during childhood or adolescence, in environments where emotions were unpredictable, where reactions were inconsistent, where mistakes carried heavy consequences. The brain learned a survival strategy: anticipate everything, stay ahead, predict before it happens, because if you can foresee what's coming, maybe you can protect yourself. From this perspective, overthinking isn't a flaw, it's adaptation. A highly intelligent nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do. Now here's something crucial. Not all overthinking is the same. Psychologists generally describe two distinct forms. The first is reflective rumination, a deeper, more intentional form of thinking where a person tries to understand themselves, process emotions, and make sense of experiences. When balanced, this is a strength. It builds emotional intelligence and self-awareness. The second is brooding rumination, a heavier, more draining loop where the mind fixates on problems without moving toward resolution. This is where the cost begins: sleep disruption, decision paralysis, social anxiety fueled by overanalyzing every detail. The challenge? Most people don't stay in just one category. They shift between both, often without realizing it. A moment of healthy reflection can quietly spiral into mental overdrive. And because thinking feels productive, because the brain is active, it creates the illusion of progress. But in reality, nothing is being solved, only repeated. This is where dopamine enters the equation. Every time the brain engages in problem solving, even imagined problem solving, it releases small amounts of dopamine. So when someone replays scenarios, builds arguments, or analyzes every angle, the brain is actually rewarding the activity itself, not the outcome. That's why telling someone to just stop thinking doesn't work. Their brain is chemically wired in that moment to keep going. So what does all this say about a person? Interestingly, research reveals something powerful. People who tend to overthink often score higher in cognitive empathy, the ability to understand and anticipate how others feel. They notice subtleties others miss. They pick up on tone, energy, unspoken tension. They feel the emotional weight in a room without a single word being said. The same mental engine that exhausts them also makes them deeply perceptive. But here's the tension. Awareness without resolution becomes overwhelming. They see everything. They feel everything. They consider every possibility. And yet, the more they think, the harder clarity becomes. Because here's the quiet truth, echoing what Epictetus taught in his own way. Not everything is meant to be controlled or solved. Some things must be felt, some must be decided, and some must simply be released. That's why modern therapeutic approaches don't focus on stopping thoughts, but on transforming the relationship with them. One powerful concept is cognitive diffusion, learning to observe thoughts without becoming entangled in them. Instead of, "This situation is dangerous, I need to solve it," the shift becomes, "My mind is generating a concern right now." It's subtle, but it creates space. And in that space, control begins. At its core, overthinking is not a defect. It is not weakness. It is a highly active mind shaped by experiences it didn't choose. A mind that learned to stay alert in order to stay safe. The real challenge isn't to silence that mind completely. The real challenge is to gently teach it that it no longer has to be on guard all the time, that it is finally safe enough to rest. And maybe that's the most human truth of all. We all carry patterns shaped by past environments. Understanding them doesn't erase them, but it does loosen their grip. And sometimes that understanding is exactly where true change begins.